Hello everyone, welcome to another Coffee and Critique Screencast Critique Series for 52 Frames. I am Yosef and haven't done one of these in a while because been really busy with the project. And usually I do a Coffee and Critique on Monday morning, and I thought to myself, you know what, it's the end of the week, but I'd really like to get one of these out, especially this past week's album, one of my favorite albums of the year, to really get a peek inside everybody's hometown. I think it's great. So I'm going to go through some of these photos and give a photo critique from my brain into your ears. That sounds disgusting, but it's actually quite beautiful. So sit back and relax. The only thing I request is that you do watch this in HD, especially if you're watching this on Facebook. So the first thing I just wanted to give a shout out to the people that have been posting some great behind the scenes video from the 52 Frames community. We have here Yosef Itzinger, who actually edited a really nice dynamic video for week 1 and week 2 about how he set up his shots. And then on the editing side, Dan Sokolow put together 2 small screencasts that I think are really tailored to beginner photographers, which I think could be really helpful for a lot of you. And then we have a more in-depth screencast from Yermi Van, how he went into some more advanced techniques of how to composite. He's taken on his own personal challenge this year of only submitting composite photos to 52 Frames, which is very ambitious, but definitely check those out. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I'll put the links below. And I would love to compile these in the future. Once I get the website updated for this year, I'd really like to start getting back to rolling out blog posts. And one of those blog categories I would love to have a behind the scenes where I can put together some of my shots that I've done behind the scenes with a tutorial screencast similar to this. And I would love to highlight some of your behind the scenes submissions as well. I think that'll be a lot of fun, maybe even to just make one long video. So definitely keep them coming. I'd love to use them in the future, and they're really just very entertaining to watch. It really warms my heart that you guys are just building this content, that you're just so involved. I think it's great. And it's great to also see into your world about how, you know, some guy in Cincinnati, America, is doing the exact same things as some stay-at-home mom from Amsterdam, you know, fidgeting with the camera and having fun and being creative. So I really love it. Keep it coming. So let's get started. I pulled out a bunch of photos that I think I can make some commentary on. Also, halfway through pulling these out, I realized that a lot of these are missing the exif data. Exif data, let's find one that has it. Exif data is basically just the data that's embedded in each file that your camera takes that says you shot it with a certain type of lens, what kind of camera, more importantly, the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO. And seeing that, I'm better able to critique, to see like, oh, if something's blurry, let's say I can look at your shutter speed and see if that was the issue. So halfway through, I then switched to only choosing ones that have the exif data. Reasons why your exif data would be missing: if you import into certain softwares like Picasa or sometimes Lightroom, there is an option when you're exporting out to your final JPEG to wipe it or to leave it. I suggest you leave it, unless you're hiding something. Okay. So let's dive in. This picture, I'm just going to say that in general, you know, there's a lot of gray area of what constitutes a photograph. We have had people before submit like collages where you have multiple photos in a frame. I think it's artistic. I think there's definitely reasons to do this, but I think by default, generally you are detracting from what I believe is the definition of a photograph. You're kind of going away from that notion of one frame capturing a moment. So I think by default, you should avoid doing something like this unless it has a very specific meaning, then, by all means, it's your creative decision. I really like this photo. I'm seeing, I guess this is smoke or clouds, but it does look a little bit like dirt, like crunchy. I think that's the overall issue that I have with this photo, is the crunchy factor. And I wish I had a better word to describe that, because you either understand what that means or you don't. But it basically means that your contrast slider or clarity slider is just amped a bit too high for me. Let's see if I can, see if I lower the clarity and the contrast here. Again, this is a little too smooth, but just to show you the difference of what I'm talking about, this is crunchy and this is soft. So you want really something in the middle, I think. For instance, in this softer image, if you will, this does look like smoke, whereas when it was crunchy, it kind of looks almost like dirt on the lens. So I think this is the clarity taken a bit too far, but again, it's to each their own preference. This is nice. I'm not even sure. Is this a cemetery or is this a botanical gardens? My major issue with this is your highlights. So, if you look carefully at each bright spot in the photo, it's actually so bright that you don't see any data at all. This could be anything. There could be words here. This could be stone. So that means it's clipped. That means your highlights are clipped. And in different editing programs, you can actually see a clipping warning, which is indicated here by all the red spots. You could even get that in the back of your camera. Most cameras have a feature where it will blink at you where a part of the image is clipped. Not to say that there can't be certain parts of your image that are clipped. I mean, if you're shooting into the sun, for example, you'll probably get some white areas, but you have to use it with your image. If you were shooting in a RAW format, not a JPEG format, I could take this highlight slider and bring it down, but in this case, it's just going to make it gray. You're not going to get any more data there. That data is lost. So I would have exposed a little bit darker so we could see those areas. Jay Grossnickel, this is a lovely photo. I'm trying to think if it's askew at all. Here's a really cool feature in Adobe Camera Raw, which is what I use. Very, very similar to Lightroom. In fact, I believe it is, I dare say, almost identical, but the layout is completely different. And here, if you double click on the straighten tool, it actually gives you what the computer thinks. I say it in that voice because, obviously we know more than computers, but this actually does look straighter to me. The computer usually does get it right. Besides that, this is really lovely. You have space here. I talk so much about headspace, which usually comes into play with a portrait. Let's see if I could bring a portrait here. So here, this is Rachel Tryon, which is a really beautiful photo here. Headspace. This is the amount of headspace that you want. Ideally, this is a great example. Just the right amount of space above your subject's head. If you took this photo and had you taken it like this, not to say that's wrong. This actually also looks like, for this composition, I think works. But generally, when you're taking a portrait, you want to leave this amount of healthy headspace between the top of the head and the frame. Again, unless you were going for an artsy, closer in shot. And I like to call it headspace whether I'm talking about a head or not. So even down here, like this, this is just me personally. I don't know if other photographers do this, but just so you know my crazy lingo, this I would refer to as headspace. It's this bottom area, let's say, would be the bottom of the subject, or the top of the subject's head, if you will. And this here on the bottom would be a good amount of headspace. Good amount of headspace here as well. Just the right amount of breathing room. You're showing, like, this here is the subject. let me just bring this into Photoshop quick because it's just a really nice, it's a really nice framing. So this here is your subject, right? And you're giving all this is a good amount of breathing room all around. Really nicely done. Nice blue hour. I dig it. I dig it. Here again, I feel like the horizon may be a tad off. Let's see what Big Brother has to say about that. That looks pretty dramatic, but you know what? I think maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But horizon lines are, yeah, this is a bit much. Come on, computer. Way off. Horizon lines are something, I'll just do this manually. Take a straight line there. That's straight. And I think that's going to be a bit of a theme here for this screencast. I love the leading lines. Beautiful. You got a line coming right out of the corner, leading you into the subject. Really lovely image. I would maybe make the highlights a little bit softer here, and then I would maybe make the shadows a little bit higher here, but all right. You know, you get the idea. Really cool shot. I like it. I like the train. This is a really lovely image. Let's see if we have data. No metadata. I wish I knew if this was a long exposure. I could only assume that it was a long exposure. Some hints to that effect. Perhaps this vine was moving a bit, but I'm not entirely sure. It would be great if you guys include your exif data. What I am noticing here, to my eye, you see this green, let me zoom in here, crazy amount. This green line on the edge, and you're going to see this in all the high contrast areas. In fact, in this image, we're seeing it everywhere. On every left edge, this green on the left edge. And then if you look on the right edge, you're seeing this purple. Let me just zoom in a crazy amount. You see this purple here on the right side of the branch, and then this green on the left side of the branch. That is a classic example of what's called chromatic aberration. Don't get scared. Don't get scared. Stay with me. It's just a long word, okay? It just means it's generally when your lens is shooting with a wide open aperture and you're shooting a high contrast area, which means the contrast between a dark area and a light area. Depending on the quality of your lens, you will get this chromatic aberration. Very simple fix. Again, definitely available in Lightroom. I don't know if this would be available in something like Picasa or Snapfish Chat Snipfish. What is that called? Snapseed. Snapseed? Oh my god. I sound like such an old man with your Skypes and your iPods and your Snapseeds. Okay, so a very easy tool here in Camera is this. You go to your lens correction tab and you go to the color and you just click remove. Let's zoom in here so we can see what it's doing. Okay, so we can click on the remove chromatic aberration, and then we can play with this green amount slider. And if we see that's not doing the trick, we can move it over a little bit into the blue. And here we see that it got rid of it, and there is still something. If there wasn't any kind of light there, it would have just disappeared completely. What you could also do is hit Control or Command and choose with the eyedropper tool the green, and it'll automatically choose the right green hue and the right amount to automatically do it, which is pretty cool. And then we could go over here and do the same thing on the purple, and you see it got rid of it as well. That's probably a bit too much, so maybe we'll move that slider back. Going back into full size, if we toggle it on and off, you're really not going to see much of a difference. This comes into play when you're printing images, if you're cropping images at all. And in general, it does give a sense that something is a little off, and when you clean it up, it does generally look nicer. Okay, moving right along. This is a great shot, first and foremost, because Guinness is my favorite beer. so I am biased. I'm going to say that off the bat. It's just a nice example. Aaron here lives in Ireland, and I think it's a good example. A lot of times people are like, "Oh, greetings from." Well, I can't leave the house this week, or I work during the daytime. I only get home at night. I only have nighttime. I don't have daylight. Okay, who says you need daylight to take a photograph? Who says you need to go to the tourist spot in the center of town during blue hour because you have to get the extra credit? No. Go grab yourself a pint and drink a little bit so you're a little bit buzzed and get a nice creative photograph. I think it's great. I like the angle here where it's really sharp in the foreground. You got blurry in the background. It's beautiful, Aaron. It makes me thirsty, so job well done. This is from Corey O'Hara. I wish I can have the captions in front of me, but unfortunately one is on Facebook and one is here on my computer, so I'll have to make do. But Corey, I would have to guess Central Park, but that's only because I used to live in New York, so that's New Yorkers just assume that everything is in New York. This is a really nice image, and what I really like is how you have your subject looking into the frame, meaning your subject here is on the right side of the frame and they're looking into the left. I can't really show you a reverse example, but if it was like this, let's say, then here the subject is looking out of the frame. You can't see where the subject is looking. And when that happens, you feel like you're missing out. The viewer really wants to see what the subject is looking at or running into. It gives the right amount of space that a viewer can really absorb the environment of what's happening inside of their brain. This looks a little bit, I think could be a little bit brightened. I'm looking at the histogram here, and the histogram does look okay, but the peak is more towards the left. But more important than the histogram is just, your eye. It's just important to trust your eye and to look at it. I would maybe raise the whites a little bit, or maybe even raise the exposure. To me, it just seemed like it needed it, just a little lift. But that's to my eye. I think that's something that you get over time. This one, Yonatan Elazari, who very often will take street photography shots. That's his style, which I think is very cool. And I've seen him in action. I definitely would like to make a blog post about that. So it took me a second to realize this guy in the foreground. It looks like he's playing some kind of drum. And then I guess this is a street band. It's a little bit dark for my taste. You could also see in the histogram, this wave is all the way on the left. I did talk about histograms in the past. I'm trying to cover some things for the newcomers here. So if you keep watching these screencasts, every screencast, I'll try and highlight something else and get into a bit more detail. But we'll save that for another one. The only thing I would do here in post is I guess I would just amp up the exposure for this guy just to make that a little bit clearer. And his face here, I think, needs to pop a bit more. Then once you're doing that, you could also probably like minimize some of the background, just get rid of that chatter. But yeah, really cool photo, really cool capture. I like it. Okay, this is a really nice capture, which I would probably be scared to take because I would just assume that this shirtless guy is going to look at me and yell at me. But that's that's my own fears that I need to get over. I think this is a very good thing to point out. What I mentioned about the squirrel a couple of photographs ago. Here you have the subject placed right in the center. General rule of photography, and again, rules are meant to be broken, but general rule is to not place your subject directly in the center. So like first and foremost, the notion of headspace, right? You want to have enough headspace. You don't want to have too much headspace. You have a third of the photograph here is headspace. So that's the first thing I would do. Is this would be like a more appropriate headspace. But again, he's in the center of the photograph. So ideally, not so easy to show here, but I'm talking about the notion of looking into the frame, you would really want him on the right side of the frame and then looking in like this. So this already, even though it's a bit of an extreme crop, compositionally, to me, it makes more sense. Of course, you have a bit of the clutter of the background, so you may have been able to move around a bit or wait for these people to pass, things like that. But I just thought it was a good example to point that out. So this one by Rachel, we spoke a little bit about it earlier. I just really adore this photo. It's a little bit low resolution for some reason. I see you have 1,000 wide. Generally, 2048 wide is perfect for Facebook, for just general, like not having too much data. Keeps the file size small. So it's a bit difficult to zoom in. And I just adore this shot. I wonder if you got it from a phone. I wonder if you knew these people or if they were strangers. Either way, I think it's really meaningful. So speaking of a phone, the first thing that I think of when I see this photo is that it was shot from a phone. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because there are some beautiful photos that are shot with a phone, but you need to know your limits to your gear. Let me just see if I can bring this up. Exit. Okay, iPhone 6s back camera. First of all, back camera, much better than your front camera. If you're going to shoot with your phone, use your back camera. It's meant to take photos. Front cameras are meant to take selfies. Don't use that if you're taking a photograph. Definitely use it if you're taking a selfie. Although, if I do ever take selfies, I also try and use the back of the camera. So I'm just trying to do some sleuthing here. It looks like a very sunny day. 2.2, your aperture is wide open. Yeah, your phone does all this stuff internally. I think perhaps you did some editing on it, and there's something that makes it look grainy, like a little bit muddy, meaning there's just a lack of detail. You could see like this whole stomach area here is a blob. Obviously, I'm not zooming in to show that, oh, it's supposed to be detailed when you zoom in this much. I'm just saying, if this were clear, you would still see pixels. You would see color variations, and there's some detail missing. So when you're shooting with a phone, outdoors, don't shoot indoors at night generally. Sunny conditions are great. Overcast would also be great. You know, you need to treat your photos with a little bit more care. This one by Zahava, it looks like a little monkey finger puppet with a sign that says hi. The hi, I think, could have been in focus. I love the really shallow depth of field that you have, which blurs out the background, which is why the sign isn't in focus. So I would have just extended that aperture a little bit more just to get that in focus. And I think another example of, be creative. Does this count, quote unquote, for a greetings from? Are we seeing where you're from? No, we're not really seeing where you're from. So, maybe you could have gotten out and like Aaron did, show a little bit of, or maybe this is your culture has a little finger puppet monkey. So I don't mean to, I don't mean to speak for your culture, no disrespect, but I do like that you said, you know what, let me just get a creative shot. Let me welcome myself. Let me say hi to the group. And I think that's a great way. No excuses, just shoot, be creative, and get her done. This is really lovely. I want to run in this field and roll around in it. It looks beautiful. I would say get low. And I'm surprised this hasn't come up sooner, because usually it comes up all the time. My default when I'm out shooting is my first position is I get low. And then I get up and I say, maybe I can get from, regular eye level. And the reason I say that here, because if you got lower, you could still get this funky foreground stuff. Maybe. I don't know how high it was. You would still definitely be able to get this bale of hay here. And you would get more of the background. I feel like the background is cropped. I want to see what's beyond this house here. I want to see more depth, and that you would be able to get that if you had gotten lower. This is a really cool shot. I like this. I like all the lines. You have a lot of lines happening here, and then here's another line, and there's a line, the horizon line. A horizon line, again, I have to say, it does look a bit askew. And let's go to the auto straightening tool here. Which did not do a good job because the computer's seeing all kinds of lines and it doesn't know which one is the horizon line. So I'll just do this manually. And there. That's straight. Also, it looks a little bit dark. I would probably amp up the exposure a bit. Turn on the lights a bit, you know. This looks nice. If you're losing a bit of like the time of day because the sun is like almost down or down here, so you could get a little fancy and like lower the exposure, something like that on the horizon line. You know, there are options, but to my eye, this was a little bit dark. Let's show you the before and after. This is the before and the after. Just to my eye, it seemed a little bit too dark, but really lovely photo. Really love the birds. Unfortunately, we can't see your exif data, so I would want to know what your shutter speed is. But I'd have to guess that it was at least 1/250, maybe 1/500, because the birds are sharp. You got the good wings. Good wings on those guys. What is happening here? We have a man doing a very impressive one-armed knuckle to the asphalt push-up in the middle of the road. Very cool story here. I like that. So that's the most important part of the check. Some things that maybe could improve the composition. I mean, this guy's in the middle of the road. Probably not safe, but I assume if he is, then there were no cars around. So it seems like there's cars pulled over. I would have gotten in the middle of the road and shot from here. And then use the two sides of the road as leading lines, which will give you that nice perspective effect as well. And also your subject is a bit in the center of the frame. I think it would look cooler if he was lower, higher, something. But really cool story. I'd love to know what that guy was doing. This is really artistic. Again, I don't know what greetings from exactly, maybe a bit of a loose interpretation. I'm sure that Dahlia connected those dots in her caption. But again, you know, sometimes you can't leave the house and just be creative. I mean, this is beautiful. I really could see this being a print. Being a print on a wall in an office that has no windows. That's where this should go. My only critique for this is that I think this should be centered, but I'm sure you did that intentionally. You had your reasons. So really, really cool. Orange, blue, good complementary colors. Very rich editing. Almost too much, but I can't really judge because of the JPEG quality. But very cool, very artistic. Jillian V. Turner. This looks like a lovely place to be. Again, my critique for this would be it's definitely too dark. Let's see if we could just raise the curves. You know what? Let's be a bit more aggressive. Let's just raise the whole exposure and raise. Look at that. And we'll bring some saturation back into it. Lovely. It's like opening your eyes. And then of course our horizon line is askew, so we'll just we'll straighten that. And you could see the before and the after. So you may have really been fighting with shooting into the sun, which is very difficult to do. But this to me is generally it's just a better exposure. You're really seeing the image. It's almost like you turn the lights on. So turn the lights on, people. Okay, we have time for a couple more. So I want to just go a little bit quicker. This is one of my favorite things to do, and I really don't do it often enough. There is a great photographer called Eva Pollock who shoots what she calls impressionist photography. And it's essentially taking a long shutter exposure and whipping your camera, pressing the shutter button down and whipping it down. And you get this really cool painting-like effect, which I really love. I was surprised that you shot this at 3-second shutter, which is quite long. So it's impressive that you still managed to get some of the detail here. Maybe you brought this back in Photoshop. But what I like about this is that you really still see the scene. I mean, this, what looks to me like are trees and this path in the forest or this road. I really love this style. It's very cool. So let me just do one more. This one, Know Me. I just adore this photo. It's stunning. I'm not usually a fan of selective color. And I think you may have only selected yellow, now that I'm looking at it, to highlight the taxi cabs and the double yellow line, which is very clever, and it's just beautiful. Your leading lines coming right into the corners, creating this beautiful perspective here. Not enough headspace on this top antenna. Is that the Chrysler building? That's my only critique, is that it's just a little bit more there. But besides that, I mean, this is print that one. That's gorgeous. All right, guys, that's all the time that we have. I think I went over. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I definitely want to be doing more. I love so much to give feedback on your photos, because I'm generally not able to do it as well on the Facebook album itself. This community has been so warm and outpouring this year. I love you guys so much, my little creative framers. And if you don't know what 52 Frames is, probably should have said this in the beginning. It is our photography project that I started 5 years ago now, where we issue a photo challenge every week. Come and join us, 52frames.com. This is Yosef. Until next week, happy shooting.